Martell Holt just dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. He called out the entire Love and Marriage Huntsville production team, including the show's mastermind, Carlos King, and even his ex-wife, Melody. But here's where it gets interesting. Martell claimed that the show was not just edited unfairly, but actually scripted to make him look bad. Now, you won't believe what insiders are saying. Some sources claim that Martell might not be as innocent as he wants people to think. Instead, he could be playing a role himself, using this controversy to stay in the spotlight. So, the big question is, was Martell finally telling the truth, or was this just another one of his calculated moves? Martell had never been afraid to speak his mind, but this time, he took things to a whole new level. He accused the show's producers of twisting reality, manipulating footage, and deliberately portraying him as the villain. But let me tell you, the craziest part is that some fans weren't entirely convinced. While many were quick to support him, others believed he was only speaking out because he was losing control of his image. Could it be that Martell was just trying to rewrite his own story after being painted as the bad guy for so long? This is where it gets even more shocking. Martell didn't just blame the producers, he also hinted that Melody was getting special treatment. According to him, whenever she did something messy, the show either downplayed it or spun the story in her favor. Meanwhile, his mistakes were put under a microscope, making him look like the toxic, aggressive ex-husband. But here's the twist. Some fans started questioning if Martell was just bitter because Melody had managed to move on while his reputation continued to take a hit. But wait, it gets even messier. Martell also suggested that not everything viewers saw on Love and Marriage Huntsville was real. He hinted that cast members, including himself, were sometimes encouraged to exaggerate conflicts or even stage arguments just to keep the drama going. If that was true, it meant the show wasn't as authentic as fans had believed. But this is where destiny took an unexpected turn. If Martell had been playing a role all along, how much of what he was saying now could even be trusted? Now, here's the part that no one saw coming. Carlos King, the man behind the show, had remained surprisingly silent throughout all of this. Normally, Carlos wasn't one to shy away from addressing drama, but this time, he didn't say much. And you know what they say, sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Was Carlos ignoring Martell to avoid giving him more attention? Or was he simply letting Martell dig his own grave? And if Martell was really telling the truth, why hadn't he provided any solid proof? Could it be that he was still under contract, unable to reveal too much without facing serious legal consequences? But here's what makes this story different. Martell wasn't just accusing the show of being fake. He was also implying that he had been unfairly used to boost ratings. And if there was any truth to that, it meant Love and Marriage. Huntsville wasn't about reality at all. It was about storytelling. But if Martell had willingly played along for years, why was he suddenly exposing everything now? Could this be his way of making sure he stayed relevant? Or was this his final attempt to control his own narrative before things spiraled out of his hands? But here's where it gets even crazier. If Martell had been dealing with unfair editing for years, why was he only speaking up now? Some fans believed he had no problem playing the role of the charming husband in the early seasons. Back then, the show helped him build his image, and he seemed to enjoy the attention. But once his reputation took a major hit, he started to push back. Could it be that he only had a problem with the show's editing when it no longer worked in his favor? Let me tell you, this is where things start to take a strange turn. Over the past year, Martell had been dealing with several public embarrassments, from his ongoing child support drama to his struggling business ventures. It was no secret that he wasn't in the best place. So when he suddenly started attacking the show, some people thought it wasn't about exposing the truth, it was about saving himself. If Martell could convince people that Love and Marriage, Huntsville had been controlling his image, maybe he could shift the blame away from himself. But here's the shocking part. What if this entire controversy was just another performance? And here's another thing that didn't quite add up. If Martell was so unhappy with how he was portrayed, why didn't he just leave the show? He had been a central cast member since the beginning, and if he truly believed the producers were setting him up, he could have walked away, but instead, he stayed. Some fans pointed out that if he really hated how the show made him look, he wouldn't have continued filming. So, was he really a victim of unfair editing, or was he just upset that he no longer controlled the narrative? This is where it gets even more interesting. Martell claimed that Carlos King had been using him as a scapegoat for ratings. According to Martell, Carlos had a pattern of painting certain cast members as villains while protecting others. And here's what makes this theory so wild. Carlos had done this before on other reality shows. He was known for crafting storylines that kept viewers hooked, often by creating clear heroes and villains. So, was Martell really being unfairly portrayed, or was he just another reality star realizing too late that he didn't like the role he had been given? And let's not forget about Melody. Martell insisted that the show gave her special treatment, but was that really true? Some fans agreed with him, pointing out that Melody's messy moments never seemed to stick to her the way Martell's scandals did. Others argued that Melody simply played the game smarter. Unlike Martell, she didn't constantly go off on social media or expose behind-the-scenes secrets. Could it be that Carlos King wasn't protecting Melody, but instead, she just knew how to handle reality TV better than Martell did? But here's the real question. If everything Martell was saying was true, why hadn't he provided solid proof? If the show was scripted and manipulated, why didn't he release footage, emails, or any kind of evidence to back up his claims? Could it be that he was still under contract, legally unable to expose too much, or was this whole thing just a desperate attempt to stay in the spotlight? But here's where it gets even wilder. If Martell really had proof that Love and Marriage Huntsville was manipulated, why wasn't he showing it? If he truly wanted people to believe him, wouldn't it make sense to provide real evidence? This is where fans started questioning his motives. Some believed he was under strict contracts that legally prevented him from leaking anything. But others thought the real reason was much simpler. Maybe he had no proof at all. And let me tell you, this is where destiny took an unexpected turn. Martell's accusations weren't just about the show's editing. He also hinted that some of the drama wasn't even real. According to him, cast members, including himself, sometimes played things up for the cameras. That meant fans weren't watching reality. They were watching a carefully crafted story. But here's the craziest part. If Martell had been acting all along, then how could anyone trust what he was saying now? If he had played a role in the past, what if this was just another role? Carlos King's silence only made things more suspicious. Normally, when drama exploded around one of his shows, Carlos had no problem addressing it. He was known for being vocal, always defending his work. But this time, he stayed quiet. And you won't believe what happened next. Fans started wondering if Carlos was keeping quiet because he knew Martell was telling the truth. Was he avoiding the topic to stop the controversy from growing? Or was he simply letting Martell expose himself? Then there was Melody. She never directly responded to Martell's claims, but her social media posts spoke volumes. In one of her cryptic messages, she wrote, "When you're unbothered and booked, the lies don't matter." Fans immediately took this as a shot at Martell. But here's the twist. Was she brushing off his claims because they weren't true? Or was she just smart enough not to engage? Some believe Melody wasn't necessarily innocent, but she knew how to protect her image better than Martell ever could. Now, this is where it gets even messier. If Martell was telling the truth about the show being scripted, it would mean Love and Marriage. Huntsville wasn't much different from other reality shows accused of faking drama. But the biggest question remained, why was Martell still part of it? If he hated how he was being portrayed, why not walk away? Some fans believed he was trapped by contracts, but others thought the answer was simpler. He needed the show. Even if he was being painted as the villain, it was still keeping him relevant. But what if this entire situation was just a calculated move? Think about it. The timing of Martell's accusations seemed suspicious. Reality TV stars were known for stirring up drama right before a new season aired. Was Martell really exposing the truth, or was he just making sure he had a major storyline going into the next season? If that was the case, then everything he said might not have been about justice. It might have just been about staying on the show. But here's where it gets even more bizarre. If Martell was really trying to expose the truth, why did it seem like he was still playing the game? On one hand, he wanted people to believe the show was scripted and that he had been unfairly portrayed. But on the other hand, he was still part of it, still filming, still showing up for drama. So was he really the victim, or was this just another way to make sure he stayed in the spotlight? And let me tell you, this is where things took an even darker turn. If Martell's claims about producers scripting moments were true, then that meant a lot of the show's biggest moments weren't as real as fans thought. People had spent years taking sides, arguing over who was right and who was wrong, only to now be told that some of it might have been planned all along. And the craziest part, Martell admitted that he himself had played along with the drama at times. But if that was true, then how could anyone be sure he wasn't just acting again? Carlos King still hadn't directly responded, and that silence was starting to speak volumes. Fans were now split into two groups: those who believed Martell was finally telling the truth, and those who thought he was just bitter about how things had played out. And here's the shocking part. Some people even believe this entire controversy was exactly what Carlos wanted. Reality TV thrived on scandal, and what better way to keep people watching than by making them question what was real and what wasn't? And then there was Melody. Whether or not she got special treatment, one thing was clear. She had come out of this situation looking far better than Martell. While he was busy trying to fight against the show's narrative, she was booking deals, growing her fan base, and keeping quiet. This only made Martell's claims look more like an attempt to drag her down. But what if Martell was right? What if she really did get a better edit while he was made to look worse? But this is where it gets even more complicated. Even if Martell was telling the truth, did it even matter? Fans of reality TV had known for years that these shows weren't 100% real. People watched for entertainment, not for authenticity. So even if Love and Marriage Huntsville was scripted, would it actually change anything? Or was Martell just wasting his time trying to convince people of something they didn't really care about? And now, the biggest question of all, was Martell planning to leave the show? Or was this just another way to make himself the center of attention? If he truly wanted to expose the industry, he could have walked away and told everything. But instead, he was still there, still playing a role, still part of the chaos. So, was this about truth, or was this just about making sure his name stayed in the headlines? But here's where the controversy took its final, most unexpected turn. Despite all his claims about being manipulated, Martell was still deeply involved with Love and Marriage Huntsville. If he truly wanted to expose the show for being fake, why hadn't he walked away? Instead, he was still part of the drama, still filming scenes, still engaging in social media battles. And you won't believe what happened next. Some fans started suspecting that this entire situation wasn't just about the show, but about Martell's own desperation to control the narrative around his life. Let me tell you, this is where it got really messy. Many believe that Martell was using these accusations not to bring down the show, but to clean up his own image. His reputation had taken a major hit over the years. From his messy divorce to his ongoing personal struggles, he had been painted as the villain time and time again. And Now, suddenly, he wanted people to believe that he wasn't actually the bad guy, but a victim of reality TV manipulation. The timing seemed way too convenient. And the craziest part, Carlos King still wasn't saying much. His silence left room for endless speculation. Some fans believe Carlos was simply ignoring Martell, refusing to give him any attention. But others wondered if Carlos was keeping quiet because there was some truth to what Martell was saying. After all, Carlos had built an entire empire on producing drama-filled reality TV. If Martell's accusations got too much attention, would it hurt Carlos's brand? Or was Carlos simply letting Martell dig his own hole? But here's where it gets even more interesting. If Martell had real proof that the show was fake, why wasn't he showing it? Contracts might have prevented him from speaking out completely, but that hadn't stopped other reality stars in the past from leaking behind-the-scenes information. And yet, Martell wasn't providing any hard evidence. No leaked scripts, no footage proving scenes were staged, just his word. And at this point, fans weren't sure if they could trust it. And let's not forget about Melody. While Martell was busy exposing the show, she was moving on with her life. Whether she was really getting special treatment or not, one thing was clear. She wasn't giving Martell the attention he wanted. And that might have been the real reason why he was lashing out. While she was thriving, he was stuck fighting against the same storyline he had been part of for years. So, what was the truth? Was Martell really exposing the dark side of reality TV, or was this just his latest attempt to stay relevant? And more importantly, would his accusations actually change anything? Fans have been watching Love and Marriage, Huntsville long enough to know that reality TV was never completely real. As long as the drama kept them entertained, most people didn't care. And that's the real kicker. Whether Martell was lying or telling the truth, the show would go on. The drama would continue. And at the end of the day, Carlos King, the producers, and even Martell himself all knew one thing: controversy sells.